Welcome back, YouTube. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Good afternoon. It's nice to be back. It's nice to hear from, all of you. It's hopefully going well for everyone. I haven't been here. It's been quite a long time since I'm back to the channel. And man, I do apologize. Life goes on. Life gets busy. So it's been pretty hectic. But I'll tell you what, that being said, of course, just want to get on the channel. Just get back with everyone. Hopefully everything's well for everyone, and get back to what we've been talking about for a while, right? We've talked about so many different things. Obviously, I like to get around, talk about different things, right? That's just what my podcast is about. We're discussing life and how things go about, in our everyday life. And so this week I wanted to talk about how, what it means to really sometimes, what being a leader is like, right? And the metaphor that, or you can say a little phrase that came to my mind was, to be a leader is to be like a sponge. That's very interesting, right? Like, what the heck? What does that even mean, right? So a sponge, when dry, is almost very, crunchy, right? You can't really squeeze it anymore. There's not much in it. You can't bend it. It's not flexible at all. But as you start to fill it with mostly liquid water, right, it starts to become more flexible. That's very deep, right? A sponge, when it's empty on the inside, there's nothing in it. Very, very harsh, right? Very stern, very strong, right? Very not agile. As it starts to fill up, as it starts to absorb, it starts to become more flexible, right? It starts to become squishy, right? So why do I say that, right? I think when you may be going through something right now, when you are put into a position of leadership, it's challenging, man. It's not easy. It really is not easy, because the title, the label leader or leadership feels great. Everybody wants to take on some responsibility, lead a group of people, get going, right? It's cool. It's great. But when you're in that situation, when you're in that position, it's not that easy. It's kind of tricky, right? And you'll have a lot of challenges, a lot of wrenches thrown at you. And you're like, my goodness, it can be very stressful. It can be a lot. It can be very anxiety inducing, right? You get a little anxious because you've got to manage people, and managing people is difficult, man. It's no easy task. You've got so many different minds, so many different, people, personalities. So how do we manage all that, right? So before you get into coaching and leading and guiding people, the number one thing that I wanted to talk about today, right? Really want to get into that thing we tend to forget and we tend to overlook. But we have to have this attribute. Right? This is an attribute that kind of gets your team. Initially, they may not be on the same page as you. Initially, they don't want the way things are going and how you're trying to change things. So they might show some backlash. But the trick and the reality is, and we tend to forget that, because we're also human, right? Whenever we see some backlash, we want to respond to it, right? We want to give some feedback, some reaction to whatever people are throwing at us. And that's okay. That's normal. But this is where the sponge analogy comes in, right? So before we set the tone, before we make any changes or any differences, you have to become a sponge. That's tricky. So what does that mean, right? What does that mean? You've got to learn to absorb people's words, their attitudes, their reactions towards you, towards whatever directions you give to them, whatever plan you put into place, whatever change you're trying to make, whether it's physical, verbal, whatever change you try to implement and how you implement it, could be physically, verbally, right? It's gonna have a reaction. So now when those reactions happen, the number one way to start winning your team is to just absorb. Be a sponge, right? Initially, you're empty on the inside. You're strong, you're stern, you're standing up straight just like a sponge, right? You can't be broken, you can't be turned, twisted. But at some point, you're going to have to start absorbing. Otherwise, you're going to get broken when you have to become flexible. Because a sponge that's dry, when you try to bend it, it has to become flexible. If it's dry, it'll break. Right? It'll rip apart. Just like us humans. But when you start to open up, you start to absorb. And that's when you show your flexibility, right? That's when people are showing reactions to you, any attitude, any smart comments, right? We all get that. I get that. And you absorb and you just take it in. See, that takes greatness. And that's when you start to rise to greatness. When you keep absorbing. And the people around you are like, what is this person, man? Like, how are you so calm? How are you just taking in everything we're saying and not showing any reactions? Now, obviously, if there's something that jeopardizes your job, your work, you've got to step up and let them know directly, hey, we can't. But then there's certain things that are not as critical or crucial, right? Those things kind of take a little step back and just make the changes. But when people don't respond or do show attitude, just breathe and take it in. You got to give them time, because the more they're because they have, reactions that are built up for whatever reason. You just keep taking it, because you're giving them time to just express themselves, right? When people get to express themselves, they start to finally empty out whatever's inside of them. Those frustrations, those emotions come out of them. And guess what? That's where you absorb them. Now they start to become a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more calm. You, the sponge, are taking everything in. And guess what, though? Once you've taken everything in, everyone around you is going to start to see that, man, this guy just does, or this girl, this person just doesn't, move. They're not affected by our words. They're just not. That's a strong person. That's a strong personality. Just to be standing there and taking everything, face value, just in your face, just all thrown at you, and you're taking it in. That takes a great person, man. It's hard to do. We're humans, like I said. We want to have reactions. Once you've taken everything in, everyone around you is comfortable. Now they've expressed themselves. Guess what? They're going to slowly start molding into what you've been asking. They're going to have to adapt to what you've been asking. Because they see you're not changing, you're not budging, and you're not reacting. And when a sponge fills up and it takes everything in, all that water, guess what? Just like all the emotions you've taken in, now you've learned about everybody around you. Now you've let them express themselves. Now they've opened up. They have room now to take more in because they've let everything out. And this is where you've taken everything in. Now your time comes to let things out. Let out whatever you've been taking in. Not in that negative way, by the way. I don't mean start yelling at them. No. I mean now the knowledge that you have. So you've taken their emotions in, but now you got to let out the knowledge that you've been trying to implement. And the ideas and the way of doing things. But that only comes when you first take and absorb everything that people around you are throwing at you for some amount of time, when you feel like everyone's starting to, ease up. Then you squeeze yourself like a sponge does, right? And that water that comes out of the sponge, that's your knowledge. Now you start to spread, you squeeze yourself and start to share everything that's within you, right? That knowledge that's there, that the ideas, the implementations of things that you want to do. It's time now. But first you had to let people adjust and absorb and just listen to them. And once they've done that, they see that you are a strong individual, standing in your place, not moving, not budging, but you're not also reacting. Then they start to build a level of respect for you, and that they see that that silence builds a level of respect that people start to see, and they start to respect and start to see you as a leader. And then you have your ground. Now the ball's in your court. Now it's your turn. Now it's time to lead. And that really is where you start to, now you've learned. Now this is where you learn everyone's personality around you, and you start to make the changes. All right, bring in the developments that you want in place. But first, be a sponge. Then after you've absorbed, when you can't when you can't see anything becoming anymore, you can't see anything going anymore. There's this, you don't see any changes coming. You can't see any more of the team's attitude coming towards you when you've seen that everything stops, right? There's no more wrenches or no more attitude that's going to be thrown at you. Obviously, at some point, it's not going to be 100% perfect. But once it's calmed down and mellowed out, let's get into it. Now it's time to express yourself and lead the team. Now it's time to squeeze yourself, the sponge that you are. So be like a sponge, okay? And that's the point I want to talk to you all about. Leadership is no easy task, man. It's no art. There's no guidance. There's no booklet for it. You'll learn. There are books on it, right? You can read up on it. It'll talk about psychology. It'll talk about different things, your approaches, how you can talk to people, what you can do. It'll tell you, read the people's personalities around you, right? Read the room, read each person, coach them accordingly. Yeah, you probably know that already. But how do we do that? What does it mean to read the room? And if you aren't able to immediately read the room or immediately tackle each person's attitude, what can we do? This is the step that I'm talking about today, right? In the meantime, while you're absorbing and learning and observing about your teammate, all the teammates, until then, just absorb. It'll give you a level of respect that you need, not even want. We don't want them. You need that level of respect to lead and guide people. For that, you first got to just keep taking things in the throat. Then now it's your place, because there's not much that's going to come from their end. That's it. Now you start to change things. The ground is yours. The power is yours. And now you're the leader of the group. But, I hope today's lecture was helpful. It's not a lecture, man. I don't even know why I threw that word in there. But let's talk about how hopefully that little dialogue that we have, hopefully, when I say dialogue, that you guys are commenting back in the comments and give me some ideas. Give me some ideas on how I can improve my podcast, what, you think I've said today that was beneficial, what I could be changing or my perspective could change on, and, what better ways you think I could be a better leader and how you think you've experienced in your life things that made you a better leader. Share that in the comment. Other than that, hopefully it was all is well with all of you. And I hope everyone's family, friends are good. You're all safe. It's been a while. Hopefully you enjoy the podcast and you've enjoyed it. Leave me some comments. Give me a like. Give me a subscribe. We'll chat next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.